Hello my gorgeous cuties out there and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite brands and the one palette that I would declutter if I had to let something go. Now I was inspired to do this from Angelica Nikovis, but I believe the original creator is Glitter Fallout and I have watched other YouTubers do this video. So I will link the ones that I watched below so you can check their videos out too. But I just thought this was a fun video to do and I wanted to do one myself. But before we get into this video, if you're new here, hello, welcome. My name is Bree and I'm just a crazy lover of all things beauty. I like to post a lot of fun, colorful makeup content. So if those are things you're into, please hit that subscribe button and join this little family. But with that being said, let's get into this video. Alright my loves, I think this is going to be kind of fun, a little hard, but not too hard. Now it's weird to talk about supposedly letting go of palette because I don't plan to declutter these palettes because I already did a huge declutter at the beginning of the year and I actually let some palettes go from these brands, so technically those would be the ones I would declutter, but I actually already did, and I decided to still keep these because I still do love them, but I don't love them as much as the other palettes from these brands. Now I only have 12 palettes here from 12 different brands. I only picked from brands that I had multiple palettes from. There are other brands that I have palettes from, but some of them I only have one or two, so I just wanted to stick to the ones that I had more than 2 palettes from them. So I narrowed it down to 12 because if I did every brand that I had, we'd probably be here for a while. So I'm gonna just get into it and show you guys what I would let go. So the first brand, which is Kaleidos, and I've talked about Kaleidos many times on my channel. I've done a lot of reviews. They're one of my favorite indie brands, so to let things go from them is very hard. I don't think I've ever decluttered a Kaleidos palette actually, so this is weird to say I would let this go, but this is probably my least favorite from the brand. So this is the Kaleidos Futurism Lunar Lavender palette. So I think it's a beautiful, more nudie palette, more soft. But the reason why I would let this one go is because of this shade right here. I don't think it's very good quality, which is surprising because I've never come across a bad eyeshadow palette before from Kaleidos. It just did not perform well. It was patchy, it wasn't blendable, it wasn't laying over other shades very well. So to have only a 6-pan palette and have a total dud in this palette makes it not my favorite. And also I feel like I could just get these shades from other palettes. So it wasn't my favorite, even though it's pretty to look at. It's a nice soft lavender palette. I just was kind of underwhelmed by this one. So I would probably declutter this if I had to let something go from Kaleidos. All right, so the next brand is Glam Light. And the only reason why this would be the palette I chose to declutter, because it's my least favorite in terms of color story. It is a very neutral palette. This is the Chocolate Donut palette, and I prefer color, so I would definitely pick their more colorful palettes to keep. It's just a very brown, chocolatey, standard kind of neutral chocolate palette. I think it's beautiful. The quality is amazing, but this is probably the palette I reach for the least because it's so neutral, and they have so many beautiful color palettes that I love that I would rather use because I like to use a lot of colors on my eyes. I like to go really smoky sometimes like this, and this doesn't have anything super deep, and it's just so brown and pretty basic, but I still think the quality is nice. So anytime I'm in the mood to do a neutral look, I will play with this, so that's why I didn't let it go. But if I had to pick one from Glam Light, this would be the one. Then going on to Odens Eye. This is another brand that I love, and I don't think I would ever let go anything from this brand because they're one of my favorites. So the only one that I would consider if I had to pick one would be this one. This is the Saga Freya, what is this? The Amber Tears palette, which I think this was on the bottom of my ranking. I just did a ranking on all of the Odens Eye palettes. I'll link that below. I'll put it up in the corner if you want to see that whole ranking. But this is a very nudie, soft palette. It's not totally my color story. It's very light overall. It doesn't have really any depth, and it's really like neutral and just not totally my style. So I probably reach for this palette the least because they have so many beautiful colorful eyeshadow palettes that I love and rather use, and this is just not fully my style. So this would be the one that I would let go if I had to get rid of something. And then the next brand is Beach Cosmetics, and that is one of my favorite, more affordable brands. And I'm so afraid of what's gonna happen with Makeup Revolution now taking over the brand. Hopefully they don't ruin the quality. But if I had to declutter one of their palettes that I have, it would be the Puerto Rico palette. This is the Party in Puerto Rico. And I'm gonna be honest, guys, I have yet to touch this. This is actually an untouched palette. So it tells me right there, this is not really my color story, not really my vibe. I don't wear a lot of warm tone shades like this, so why did I buy it? I don't know. I do plan to play with it, and I don't want to let it go yet, but I haven't even touched it, and I've had this for months in my collection. So honestly, if I let this go, I probably would forget about it, but I'm like, hello, I need to use it. Why buy something and not even play with it a little bit? So this would probably be the one that I would let go. So that's a fail on my part for buying a color story that's not really my favorite. So the next brand is Natasha Denona, and this is a new palette. I just reviewed this, and it's so surprising that I would want to immediately let go a new palette, but I did not have the best experience with this palette so far. This is the Pastel palette, and it's very pretty. It's a beautiful, like, soft pastel color story, but I feel like there's some formula issues with this. I felt like I couldn't really get like some of the shades to blend out, like the cream to powder ones, which usually those are the ones that blend really well in Natasha Denona's palettes, and I was just really sad. And it's two colors that I really love. Like, these two didn't do very well, and I was pretty underwhelmed by this palette. And this will definitely be more of an accent palette because I did really love the shimmers in here, but this is probably like my least favorite palette that I've tried from Natasha Denona, and I'm kind of regretting picking it up. I mean, I'll still use it, and I still think there's a lot of beautiful shades in here, but if I had to let one go, this would definitely be the one I would get rid of. Now going on to Melt, and I am surprised I'm picking this one because it's a very green palette, but I don't feel like the formula is the best in this one. This is the Smoke Sessions palette. Now I do like the green metallics in here and all that, but there's a few shades that have started creating hard pan, and I'm not the biggest fan of their metallics, but this Black Widow shade is totally hard pan. This one is starting to form hard pan too, Gravity OG, and this is such a beautiful color story, but I just hate that that's starting to happen, and I'm afraid that it will happen in the other shades if I like press into them at all. The like deep mattes were just fine, but this is a heavily shimmer palette, and I feel like there's somewhat of a formula issue with these metallics because they all feel the same. So I like feel like if as I dig into them, they're all gonna start creating hard pan, and I hate when shimmers create hard pan, and I just despise that with every fiber in my being when shadows do that. So this would be the one that I would let go out of all my Melt palettes. Now going on to Nabla, which is a brand I love so much, but the one palette I would let go is the Nabla Cutie palette. This is the nude palette, and this is purely because it's a very nude palette, and I love the other ones more because they have color in it. It's just more of a cool tone, soft, like muted, neutral palette, and it's not something I reach for very often. Every now and then I want to do a very nude, cool tone neutral look, but I do have other palettes that have cool tone neutrals from them that I love more and would probably pull more before I would pull this one. So that's why this is something that I think I could let go if I had to let go something from them, but I don't plan to ever let go any of my Nabla palettes. I just love that brand too much. All right, so the next brand is Lethal Cosmetics, and I think they're a cool, innovative indie brand. They're not like my most favorite brand, but I've really enjoyed the things that I have tried from them. But the one palette that I was like iffy about. It wasn't my favorite. And this is the Lethal Cosmetics Berlin 89 palette. I was kind of underwhelmed by the metallics in here, and I thought the color story was a little funky. Like, it's unique, but I struggled to get like looks out of this, and I had a hard time figuring out what I wanted to use. Like, some of these shades I don't feel like mix really well together, because there's like some really cool tones and then some really warm tones. And I don't know, I just don't think some of the mattes mesh together. And then they have multi-chromes in here, and the multi-chromes are very underwhelming. They're very like subtle and muted and kind of more like the Natasha Denona multi-chromes that she's done. They're just like more like satins, and I didn't love that formula. And that was something that was like a big selling point to having this palette. And I just didn't like it as much as I thought I would, but I keep it because I like Lethal overall as a brand, but I would probably let that one go. Then the next brand is Unearthy, which, oh, this breaks my heart to do this because I don't think I would ever let go an Unearthy palette. That is probably like my #1 brand, like #1 out of all of them. And to choose one to let go is like heartbreaking, even though this is hypothetical, it's not real, but I have attachment issues, okay? So just the thought of letting go one of these palettes gives me anxiety. But this is the Fairy Frolic palette. Nothing's wrong with the quality or anything, but I think like out of all of them, this is probably like my least favorite color story. It's still very beautiful. It's very fall. It's more on the muted color side, and a lot of their palettes have a lot of color, a lot of bold, vibrant colors, a lot of like deep smoky shades. And to me, this is like not as great as the other ones. It's still beautiful, don't get me wrong. I love like the looks I've been able to create with this, but I'm just surprised that there's not anything a little deeper in here. I feel like there's just, I don't know, it's just not my favorite color story. I still think it's beautiful, but I just love the other ones more than this. That's the only reason. There's nothing wrong with it, and I mean the looks were beautiful with it, but if I had to pick one, that would be it, okay? So let's move on because that's making me have anxiety talking about that. Now going on to Nomad, which is another brand that I pretty much keep all their palettes because I just love this brand and what they're about and everything. But I would probably let go the Cartagena Magica palette. This is their like more like monochromatic palette. But the problem with this one is it's so light. Everything's either mid-tone or really light shades. So I wish they had put depth in here. Like maybe like a dark berry. Maybe if they put like a darker orange. Maybe even like a dark brown. And like with the packaging, like why didn't they put like a dark shade like this? Or like some greens in here. I know that they wanted it to be monochromatic, but I wish like there was some colors that were on this packaging. And I love the color store in the packaging, but it's not really in the palette. So this one overall is just very light. I have to use this as an accent palette. And a lot of their palettes are like great as standalone palettes. They have everything that I need. So this one is just like lacking that depth. And a lot of the shades look very similar on the eyes. And it's just so light. So this would be one that I would probably let go if I had to. But I don't plan to. But that would be the one. And then going on to Juvia's Place, I have a lot of palettes from them, and I've already decluttered a good amount during my declutter that I did at the beginning of this year, and I think I'm good with what I have now. But if I had to pick one, it'd probably be the Nubian 3 Coral palette. I think this is a very interesting color story, but it's probably like the one that I use the least out of all the palettes that I have. It's not every day that I'm doing like a gray corally look, so I would probably let it go for that reason because I don't use it very often. But the quality of it and all the shades are beautiful in here. It's just not my like most used color story. So that's the only reason why this would be one that I would let go. And then the last brand is Huda Beauty. And the reason why I would let this one go is because it's one of the older palettes. It's the Desert Dusk one. And I feel like the formula is not as good as like the newer palettes from Huda Beauty. There are some like issues with some of the metallics in here. They're a little bit more muted. It has like this horrible pressed glitter in it. I do like the color story, but yet again, I don't reach for too much palettes like this, like the sunset kind of palettes. And you know, it's not as good as new ones. Like the Mercury retrograde one is so good. The new nudes one, the new like Wild Jaguar palette I have from them has even better quality. So I feel like just this was released a while ago and it has some of their like older formulas in here. So that is why I would let go of this one out of all of my Huda palettes. So those were all the brands that I had palettes that I would declutter if I had to. Now I don't plan to anytime soon to declutter any of these palettes, but maybe in the future if I never use these palettes, then maybe I do need to let them go, because it does remind me like these are a lot of palettes that I don't use nowhere near as much as their other palettes. But I did have fun filming this video and talking to you guys about eyeshadow palettes and just hanging out for a little bit. But you guys will have to let me know in the comments below, if you had to declutter something, what would you let go from your collection if you had to? I would love to hear from all of y'all. And if you are new here and you enjoyed this video and you like a lot of fun, colorful makeup content, please hit that subscribe button and join this little family. Also, don't forget to check out the description below. I will link any reviews I may have done on any of these palettes that I mentioned. I will link other videos of mine you might be interested in watching. I will also have my contact and social media platforms below. I'm also on Instagram as Breezy Lifestyle and Breezy_Beauty. If you want to check me out over there, I would really love that. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video, for hanging out with me and supporting my channel. I really appreciate it. But I hope you guys are all doing well wherever you are in the world, and I'm just sending you all so much light and love. But until next time, bye guys.